The Sins! Just how much power do they actually control?
Strategic withdrawal!
Hey, hold on a minute! What about me?
Did that really just happen? So, I consider myself a movie buff. I mostly watch, collect, and appreciate movies, but I also like anime. I've been watching anime for most of my life, but I've been doing it really casually, like Dragon Ball Z casual. So now, I want to get into watching more not casual anime, if that makes sense. As I become more familiar with anime, I want to give some of my thoughts and my perspective on it, so let's get right into it. So Seven Deadly Sins is an anime that was released by Netflix in 2014. If you've been on Netflix, you'd have noticed by now that Netflix can make some pretty good shows. But is this one of them? Maybe. Just maybe. I'm also not going to review the entire show because there are other anime I want to go over, so I'm only going to talk about season 1. The show starts off with Meliodas running his tavern, the Boar Hat. His customers enjoy his service until an armored knight barges through the door and collapses to the ground. Meliodas takes care of the knight and finds out that the person inside is actually Princess Elizabeth of the Kingdom of Leonis. She goes on to explain that her own holy knights betrayed her in order to establish their power, so in order to fight back against them, she seeks help from the Seven Deadly Sins, and pretty much all of season 1 is spent searching for the other sins. Okay, pretty easy plot to follow. Then, later in the season, it's revealed that a dude named Hendrickson was the one who orchestrated the betrayal of Leonis, and the reason he did it was there was too much peace apparently. He tries to resurrect the demon race to start a prophesized holy war. But why would he do that? Actually, it's because demon blood grants more power and he's basically the envoy of the demon race because he's trying to bring them back. Basically does everything for power. In 2018, that's a pretty shallow reason to be doing things, honestly. There's so many shows and movies, even other anime, that already explore this theme. I mean, it'd be fine if they explored this theme in great detail, but the writers didn't do that. And that's basically the entire plot of season 1. Gather the sins and beat a powerful dude at the end. In regards to the sins and their, sins, what's the point in them having the title of being a sin? Some of them don't make sense, nor are they touched upon. The only sin that actually portrays being a sin is Meliodas. We saw him go crazy with his eye Solus as he unleashed his wrath upon a holy knight. That made sense because he's a sin of wrath. Bon almost made sense. He showed his greed for the magic water, but that was it. And actually, King does show his laziness at times.
Come on, guys. When you go into battle, you should wait to see how your opponent strikes first.
Shut up, King!
And that's pretty consistent with his character. Deanne doesn't envy anyone or anything, and her envy isn't touched upon at all. She wants Meliodas, but that's more lust than envy. And speaking of lust, Gother doesn't even lust for anything at all either. No other people, just talks in monotone because he's a smart guy. And then there's Merlin, the Boris in a fan service. She's so irrelevant to the story and I don't even remember what her sin is. And who gives a shit anyway? She doesn't do anything. Unless their sins are touched upon in later seasons, there really is no point to the Seven Deadly Sins right now. The dialogue. It's written like the viewer is 5 years old. When things happen on screen, characters describe what's going on like we're unable to see with our own eyes what's happening. For example, Gil Thunder explains immediately why he became good again when Margaret's demon was killed. The viewers, they're not stupid, okay? We're not stupid. We knew that Gila's dad was possessed by a demon, and when that demon was killed, her dad went back to normal. So as the viewer, we can put the pieces together, and because Gil Thunder suddenly turned good again, his actions will be enough to tell us that he was never on Hendrickson's side. Don't treat us like we're 5 years old. This is something that really bothers me about anime. A lot of shows do this. It's a waste of runtime and treats the viewer as someone who can't think for themselves. This needs to stop, or at least be kept to a minimum. Dialogue between characters is actually pretty solid.
Dumbass, she only pretended to be hurt so she could suck face with the captain.
Deanne's not that kind of girl, okay?
Their interactions and the things they say to each other is pretty entertaining.
Shut up, King!
It almost makes you want to watch them do nothing. Like, what would a day be like where all the characters just worked the tavern and did nothing else? Be fun to watch. As much as I hate Hawk, she's actually really good during relaxed moments, saying a bunch of quirky lines that mesh well with characters, and this is great because it goes on for the whole season. The characters in this story overall are very hit and miss. Some are empty and cliche, others are interesting and cliche, and others are just cliche. I find that in anime the vast majority of characters are cliched and fall under some sort of trope. But it seems like people have accepted these cliches and tropes, which anime as a community should decide if this is something you should continue to accept. Anyway, I'll go through the characters one by one. Meliodas, the big cheese of the 7 deadly sins. In the beginning, he's introduced as a happy-go-lucky pervert who worries about very little. He wears a broken sword on his back, which is actually pretty cool. He even gets really defensive about it when Bond tries to unsheath it. When you see someone that is always happy and laid back get mad, that is called character development, because it's unusual to see him that way. Even the way he dresses Princess Elizabeth in a uniform is character development because it reflects his perverted desire for her. His desire that stems from his past girlfriend, which she reminds him of and happens to be Elizabeth's ancestor. Overall, he's one of the best characters because of his quippy remarks and his likability. Princess Elizabeth. She probably has the most potential out of all the characters in the show. Like, she has good motivation. Actually, she has the best motivation in trying to take back her kingdom by assembling the deadliest entities in existence. But her character falls a bit flat. Whenever she's groped by Meliodas, she just kinda accepts it, which is really annoying and unrealistic. She's the most human character out of the cast, but she doesn't really act like one sometimes. Like, what the fuck, man? You know how inappropriate it is to grope a girl, and it's happening to you? Why aren't you flipping out? Why aren't you chokeslamming him? She does, however, try to redeem herself. She is human after all, but she also doesn't want to be useless. She tries countless times to make herself useful, which is really good. But she has a character flaw. She even walked through the tornado of insects to protect the young shepherd, which is telling of how far she's willing to go to be useful. Character development. Except it's all thrown away by her conveniently unlocking her magical power at the end, which pretty much everyone saw coming. It's so predictable. Some things hold her back, which makes her only a decent character. The cliche cute animal that is also comic relief. Are you fucking serious? I don't want to spend any more time than I have to with Hawk. Basically, her only purpose in the show is to constantly undercut the seriousness of a situation or be a roasted piggy shield at the end. It doesn't really matter though, because she just brought back to life by the power of convenience. No. Oh. No! No! Stay fucking dead, man. Oh! Fuck, man.
Whoa!
Fucking can't believe this shit. There's so much blood, like, no major characters are gonna die? That's boring. At least kill Hawk for fuck's sake. Like, the plot isn't gonna suffer at all by killing her off. I will say though, she is fun when she speaks with other characters, but I'll get into that later. Deanne is kinda interesting. Just kinda. Being giant is one thing that makes her interesting. The things she has to deal with, like walking on her own 2 feet whenever the group travels, eating by herself when she can't fit in spaces, and staying outside when the characters go inside. I'm a bit disappointed the show didn't go deeper into this by making her feel lonely or depressed.
How can you help if they all run for the hills the minute they see ya?
It did go into this more later in the season during a flashback when her and King first met, but just barely. One flashback isn't enough to fully flesh out a character. Maybe it could be a goal of hers to be normal sized, but she has trouble finding a permanent solution. Maybe that could take its toll on her and give her some character development. But nope. Fuck it. Let's just give her huge tits, and because she's giant, they'll be even bigger. I wish they fleshed out her character more, because later in the season she's just not interesting. Bon is probably the best character in the whole show. He has a tragic backstory and a good motivation for backstabbing anyone who trusts him. Not only that, he knows that when something needs to be done, he's going to do it. At the end, Deanne tries her best to not get Jericho killed, and then King needs to kill Helbram again, but Bon comes in and kills Jericho and says,
He's my best friend!
In that case, sounds like you should off him then.
"Yeah, you tell him, Bon.
I know.
Fucking tell him." His backstory could have been way more tragic. Actually, his backstory wasn't written very well at all. In the show, it went down as him choosing to sacrifice himself so that Elaine could live, which is admirable, except he's the sin of greed. It would have been much more powerful if he earned Elaine's trust, then betrayed her for the water. But later, he would begin to think his feelings for Elaine were actually real. And he'd go on to question if immortality was worth betraying the girl he possibly loved. He would still be the sin of greed, and he would have to wrestle with his title as the sin of greed. But with the way it was written, it feels like Bon was never the sin of greed. He feels like just some powerful bandit. The way the writers wrote him as someone who wasn't that greedy at all when you think about it, since he did, after all, stop pursuing the water after he got to know Elaine. Even with all that said, Bon is still the best character in the show. King is a pretty annoying character. When things get serious, he says corny, "I'm a badass little kid" dialogue.
Wow, my feelings are hurt. Who am I? Have you really forgotten about me?
I don't remember you at all.
When things aren't serious, he's always embarrassed, shy, or having a bloody nose. Those are basically all of his personality traits. Although he is interesting during his flashback with Deanne, it was really touching. And even his history with Helbram is interesting, but I'd argue that this makes Helbram a better character than King because he's more fleshed out than King is.
Ripping and snapping as their wings were plucked. The sound of everyone screaming, "Help me!" as they breathed their last. Well, just try to imagine that! Hearing those sounds all those years! No, how it felt to have them echoing in your head for all these centuries!
Outside of those flashbacks, King is just not a very good character. Gother, the cliche, soft-spoken glasses character.
Unable to control such power, he will inevitably self-destruct. It isn't perfect, but it's the best chance we've got.
I have to take a drink. So boring, monotone, and pretentious. What are his flaws? Basically, his only flaw is that he doesn't know what social norms are among people, but the show just turns that into jokes instead of character development. What's his backstory? All we got was him bonding with a demon, which was actually pretty interesting, but that only lasted for one episode, and well, Gother never really redeemed himself after that. He got stabbed in the heart and got his head severed, yet he didn't die? What the fuck is that all about? No explanation? Gother goes down easily as one of the worst characters in the show. The tone, at first, is inconsistent. At first. Although the tone is established fairly well in the beginning, a lot of this story is lighthearted and goofy. The villains are established as serious characters who shouldn't be reckoned with. But when there's a serious moment with the villain, the tone is undercut by some sort of comedic act. Like, where was this before? These villains weren't acting funny in the beginning. Where did this come from? Are they serious or not? As the show goes on, it does get more consistent when the villains do comedic things for the rest of the season, so it does redeem itself, but then Hawk comes in and 1000 Divine cuts the tone. Character design is actually very well done, although I'm telling you right now, it is on the border of too much fan service. They keep coming close to crossing the line in terms of fan service, but I'll get into that in just a sec. So, the design of the villains is awesome. Each one has their own unique design and they look menacing, except for her. As for the design of our main cast, it's pretty decent. Meliodas looks like he perfectly fits the time. Bon's outfit is a bit of a stretch for the time period, but it's still believable enough. King gives off young wizard vibes and it fits his character. Gother, on the other hand, looks like a girl, which is distracting. Like, it's fine if a character looks like a girl in certain instances, but not here. Just what purpose does his physically feminine qualities serve in the story or in his character development? So far, there's really no reason. It's just distracting. There should be a reason for absolutely everything in a story. As for the girls, Princess Elizabeth's outfit makes sense because she doesn't really fight. It helps bring in customers to the Boar Hat Tavern, and it reflects Meliodas' desire for her. Her outfit serves a purpose. I'd say her design isn't too fan-servicey. Honestly, it isn't even revealing compared to other anime. As for Deanne, she is at the border of too much fan service, but her outfit actually makes sense because it allows her to stay mobile when she needs to fight. She also shows off a bit of skin in order to get Meliodas' attention, so it fits here. Fan service overall in this anime isn't too bad.
Have a look, Captain. Ready to get naughty? All the stuff that you do to Elizabeth every day, you can do to me.
Never mind that! Now go get me what are you waiting for?
So, get out of those clothes now!
The music in this anime is absolutely incredible. It's so good that it's actually the best part of the show. Composer Hiroyuki Sawano knows what the hell he's doing. The soundtrack fits perfectly with the period, the mood, the action, and the characters. It's so well done and I just can't praise it enough, so we'll leave it at that. I decided that scores will be done on a 10-point scale, where 5 is just plain average and 10 is a masterpiece. So far, the shallow plot and lazy writing really bring this show down, as well as the crappy dialogue and the annoying exposition. And then the characters are disappointing. Tone and the fan service both being on the border of being bad. There's a lot here that will leave you disappointed that this show wasn't deeper and more fun to watch. Instead, it turns out to be a bland, typical anime with typical character tropes, typical writing, and typical fan service. Although there are some redeeming qualities, like the music, which is outstanding. Then there's Bon and Meliodas, who really do a lot for the show. And then the dialogue between the characters, as well as their interactions during relaxed moments, is such a great part of the show. Overall, this will leave you wanting more from it, in the worst sense possible though. Usually wanting more is a good thing to say about a show, but in this case, it'll leave you disappointed that you didn't get more from it. 7 Deadly Sins gets a 6 out of 10. It's basically a have fun, don't think about it too much kind of show. If you go in with that mindset, then you'll love the show, but if you're someone like me who wants a lot out of a show, then maybe look someplace else. It's worth a watch if you like fun anime, but it isn't a show that offers much in terms of plot or character complexity. All of this and corny I'm a badass character dialogue and mannerisms makes his character shallower. I can't say that word. Shallower. Fucking hell. Even with all that said, damn it. That fucking word throws me off. Shallower. Shallower.
Ah, shut up, King.